The Ark used to be a lush and beautiful island with sprawling forests, bountiful lakes and rivers, full of dinosaurs roaming peacefully in a perfect ecosystem. But then that all changed during the draconic invasion. Dragons began to fill the sky, scorching the earth with their fire. Water has become scarce as survivors are forced to use cactus to quench their thirst, and hordes of goblins now infest the many sand dunes. Even the weather's trying to kill you as deadly storms ravage the lands, all while dangerous beasts call this land their home. I have only 100 days to defeat or tame the beasts within this land in order to become the Dragon King. And there are a few other goals I'll have to achieve in order to claim my rightful place as a Dragon Knight, including taming every dragon, defeating every boss, and collecting all the hidden jewels this desert has claimed. I won't be able to do any of that, however, if I can't survive my first few days after waking up with the sun already beating down on me. Oh, it's so hot. Okay. Fortunately, we're in the shade already. It's a super heat, of course. Day one. Let's go. Glad it's spawned right next to water. That's convenient. Since I already had water, that was one of my biggest concerns sorted. But I was just starting out. Alright. Let's grab some bushes, some rocks, some wood, stone, and thatch. And what is that? Oh, those are big spiders. Those are very big spiders. Don't see me, don't see me, don't see me. Please, 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 please. I don't like spiders. Okay, yeah, let's run this way. Scorching heat and giant spiders, I must be in Australia. Began to grab all the resources I could from the bushes in the area, weaving some of the fibers together in order to make my first set of cloth armor. Wouldn't protect me from any dangers, but at least it'd help with some of the heat. I then kept moving through the tall grass. Snake! I sprinted away, leading the snake right into the morella tops which it aggroed onto, but I could also see more commotion off to the side. I really did not want to die till I had a bed down, as there was no guarantee I'd get as lucky to spawn next to water again. So as I ran off, I did see a jug bug I sucked the oil out of, no until the United States. Then kept up my early work gathering fiber, thatch and stone to make a stone pickaxe. Used it to gather even more resources like wood, thatch and flint, fastening it all together in order to make a stone hatchet and a pair of reusable spears, my first weapon. It's not great, but it'd make a good giant's toothpick. And with my new axe I gathered up wood and stone, using the extra resources to begin making cooking pots for experience, as I was going to need levels if I had any hope of surviving here, spending a good chunk of time crafting and destroying the pots. But while I farm just a bit of experience, I need your guys' help by letting me tell you about today's video sponsor. A game you have likely heard of before, but definitely one you should try if you haven't already. And players of this game have been waiting for over 3 years as Raid brought back Ninja. He's a super limited edition champion and is one of the all-time strongest legendaries ever released in Raid Shadow Legends. To get Ninja, download Raid using my link in the description or QR code on the screen, and then enter the promo code Ninja Returns. Existing players can get a free Ninja pack in the in-game shop by logging in for 5 days by August 20. And if you stop playing now, is definitely the time to come back to get Ninja to your collection. It's also great as right now you can win a bunch of prizes. It's simple. Download Raid using my link in the video description, then head to wefinallyplayedit.plarium.com, enter your Raid player ID, record yourself playing the game, and upload the video to the event's website with the Plarium filters and hashtag. And the top 12 submissions will win a handheld gaming console, a drone, a VR headset, and Amazon gift cards worth up to $2,000. It's that easy and you get to have fun while doing it. Raid is actually really fun and you can fight various different creatures and bosses, and it's also great for passing the time. And using my link, new players will get a huge starter pack with the epic champion Tagore, and if you reach level 15 you'll get another epic champion, Tariel, and he is super strong. So download Raid and come find me under the name Natural Causes, and thanks Raid for sponsoring this video. Let's keep going. With the bag and hide secured, I collected a few more resources then made a decision. I definitely think this is a good place to stick around, at least for now, because if I want to travel I'm going to either need to get myself a flyer, or I'm going to need to get a kangaroo, or maybe something else. Using my resources, I set up a small incomplete 2x2 house, collecting wood and setting up a bed. Finally I could die and not lose my amazing spot. But let's see how long I can go without dying for, a nice way to end off day 1. And with the sun rising on day 2, I headed out with spear in hand, only to find another snake. Okay, I want to get some metal tools, which means I need metal. To try and get that metal, I broke down some river rocks but only seemed to be getting sand. So I instead cut down another tree, using the wood to set up a campfire and some spike walls for that extra bit of protection. I then made myself a reusable bowler, giving it the old 1-2 test to ensure it works, then spotted a giant spider. Oh, okay. I did not expect that. Praetorian mega spider. Guess we really are in Australia. Once I got my stuff, I was going to go to the other side of the lake only for some wolves to jump scare me that I thankfully bowled and took down with my spears, making sure to harvest them, and was about to do the second when a terror bird attacked and killed me. Oh, why me? So I spawned in a random spot surrounded by some strange scorched Namongosaurus things. Thankfully they did not attack me, so I just keep moving, seeing a metallic Anki. Kind of ironic if you ask me. And then I saw a horse galloping away. Oh, that's why the horse is running. At least the bed is off cooldown now. So I woke up in my bed, grabbed my stuff quickly, then headed home. I knew if I wanted to start taming some dinos, I was going to need some supplies, so the morning was spent hacking at trees, gathering all the wood I needed to make a bow, harvesting up bushes by hand to collect the narco berries I needed in order to crush them into narcotics, and while dipping my arrows into the sleepy paste, I started to head out where I did have to spear a giant flying ant as well as another one. Definitely Australia. But then as I wanted to keep moving, my head started seeing double as everything was swaying from side to side. I had gotten heat stroke. Thus I was forced to retreat and sit in the water like a hippo while I cooled off to clear it up. While standing around, however, I did see a dode which I thought could be really useful for gathering sand to make some clay for adobe structures. You see, on Scorched, adobe structures are the best way to have a well-insulated base, but you need a ton of sand and cactus sap to make clay. So this dode who I was trying to put to sleep would be a fantastic early tame, only to run out of arrows, and I quickly ran to my box hut where there was a terror bird smacking its face against my spike walls, which gave me an idea. As I made myself a club, and using this chunk of wood I began to beat on the dode, smacking its head as I did my best to dodge its attacks. I was doing really well right up until I didn't, as it smacked me back into a permanent sleep. Waking up in a new body, there was a wolf patrolling my box hut. Well, that's awkward. And it eventually spotted my dode I'd been trying to put to sleep, attacking it and all but ruining all the work I had been doing the past day. So by the time I had defeated the wolf, the dode was in its arm and ball phase and completely immune to my clubbing attempts. Even spears to the ass were pretty useless, and there was a new threat however, as I spotted a thorny dragon was hovering nearby. Thankfully this one didn't have demonic flames engulfing it like the thornies in my 100 Days Primal Chaos video, and at least this one I could take out with a couple quick spear throws to it in order to end off the day. With the fresh sun rising, I jumped on a nearby rock to have a look around before spending my time in the lab mixing up some narcotics. Since heatstroke was also turning out to be a problem, I unlocked the desert cloth armor. It still won't save me from any dangers, but at least the sun beating down on me would be a bit less severe. I was just going to need silk. Thus I ran out in search, but the first path was blocked by a scorpion. The second had some spiders roaming nearby, so my only option was to follow the river, where I did spot a thorny I may want to tame, and I whipped up my bow and pulled back, firing into the lizard until it got sleepy enough that it began to run away until it passed out. I was able to shove in my meat so it could start to be my friend. And as I was looking to fight a scorpion, I spotted a wolf off in the distance, and it had a baby. So of course I wanted to see if I could get it and fired my bow, aggroing the dog over to where I could bolo it and fill its face with spears. The baby eventually came to investigate, and I made sure to bolo it before I murdered its parent right in front of it. I chose to name it Doo-Doo, though I should have named it Batman, then imprinted it and headed off to the thorny as a Prolovia attacked. I desperately tried to run only for it to catch me and eat my ass. Respawning at my base, I ran off to see Doo-Doo and my thorny were still alive. Run, Doo-Doo! The thorny died, no! Why here? No, please, please, please! No! Why? Why, Doo-Doo? Oh, that's disappointing. I eventually respawned randomly as my bed was on cooldown again, waking up right next to a thorny. I just had to run, eventually ending up at a cliff where I could see some water and leapt. Uh-oh. At least the cooldown on my bed was done, and oh my god, the spider's basically in my home. I crouched to go into stealth and snuck forwards, closing the door. This was a problem. I could see it roaming around from my roof, and if I had any hopes of defeating this thing, I was going to need some spike walls. So as it got close, I built the spike wall right on top of it, and it was now trapped. I used this chance to make up a spear and then went to town. Finally, dead. I made sure to grab my stuff, then went to harvest the corpse. That's it. Killed a giant spider and all I got was a little bit of meat and chitin. No need to dwell on that then. I took out the nearby scorpion for even more meat and chitin. I have to say, getting a little sick of all these bugs. At least the meat was good to spoil in order to make narcotics. And I saw the dode had recovered a bit by the morning, but still looked too injured to try and tame. Instead running off, looking along the river, only to get hit by the Prolovia who had chased me. Oh my god, this Prolovia, man. I'm dead. I didn't think they reburrow. I was going to need to get that stuff. Sneaking up, I couldn't see it anymore. Oh, it's burrowed on top of my loot. It leapt out of the ground, thankfully not hitting me as I began to sprint away, luring the giant rat thing as far as I could until it caught me and killed me. Except now my bed was on cooldown, so I had to spawn randomly. Why is there music? I had no idea at this stage what that music was for, only for a rainbow star ostrich to try and kill me. It began to chase me down as I sprinted towards where I thought the music was coming from, eventually spotting something in the distance and decided to have a look in photo mode, only to see what was roaming was the final boss of this mod. An extremely powerful 3-headed skeletal wyvern I would have to fight on day 100. But I still had a long way to go before I could even summon in the boss. I also had a few goals and challenges I wanted to do. I planned to steal a wyvern egg on day 25, a goal that seemed incredibly daunting right now, seeing as I had literally nothing. And I planned to steal every single artifact from the challenging caves, and I also planned to take out the Manticore, the boss of this ark who let the dragon corrupt these lands. And I started to get pretty close to home until I reached a cliff where I ultimately broke my ankles, legs and back, killing me. Whoops. At least the bed was off cooldown so I could spawn in, run over to my stuff and recover it. I then proceeded to make up a bunch of trank arrows as I actually wanted to get a tame and soon. So bowler in hand I looked, fended off the damn peggos trying to steal my shit, then decided to make some billboards in case I needed to trap something. As you can place billboards on top of tames, locking them in place so you can shoot your tranks into them. That's great. I had to jump up cliffs, eventually having a terror bird aggro onto me, and I tried to run before turning into bolos and was going to kill it, but decided to tame it instead. It broke free too soon though as I fled before it could kill me, lasting long enough to bolo it again as I kept arrowing it until it began to run. Chasing it down, I found it trapped on a rock where I was able to put it to sleep. I had to shove my meat into it so it could start taming, as well as force-fed it narco berries so that it would stay sleeping. Finally tamed and named Dalek, and riding on Dalek began to flutter our way home to hide in the safety of my box to end off the day. I made sure to do some more gathering in the morning, using my wood to set up another bed as it seemed to always be on cooldown, and I also set up some storage boxes so I could finally clear out my inventory a bit. Then mounted Dalek to head off and finally get some metal to upgrade my tools. Running across the rocky plains, past the cacti, spotting some incredibly scary looking dinos, even avoiding the Rexes in the area. Eventually fluttering my way over to the rich metal node, only for an unwelcome friend to follow me to it. Go away, Carno, you're not gonna catch me on my chicken. Finding one that didn't have a Carno waiting to eat me and hacking off chunks of the raw metal that I could smelt to finally get some upgrades. With my pockets filled, we leapt off the rock to begin the majestic flight home. Dalek fluttering her little wings in order to get home. What is that? It's a dragon. That is something that will cause me a lot of problems in the coming days. I eventually jumped off the cliff to land in a pond next to my shack, where I did have to do some final stone collection so I could set up a forge to begin smelting ingots. And I set up my smithy in the morning so I could begin forging a shiny new metal pickaxe. I also made myself a crossbow so that taming dinos would prove to be easier, but I now had a new short-term goal. Next, I want to get some crystal in order to make a spyglass. I had another terrorbird try to give me problems that I bowled and began to fill with tranks from my crossbow, but it proved to be too strong as it killed me. Respawning, I made a new bowler so I could stop the chicken in its tracks, grabbed my stuff and began to trank the terrorbird only for it to run, and I tried to chase it down only for it to vanish into the bushes where I could no longer see it. I've got no clue where it ran off to. I don't know if it passed out or... Oh, that's a saber. I managed to get my stuff only for another chicken to attack, but with no arrows I had to run except it followed me. So I bowled it again and was trying to craft up more trank arrows only for it to die on my spiked walls before I could save it. So I set off again on Dalek, running past a big feathery trike known as a shield horn, some weird goblin-y people, a larger chicken, a funny parasaur known as a tsinsao, and a flat pancaked Anki known as a pinaco. And then as I was getting closer to my destination, I spotted a shadow. Oh, that's a wyvern. Run. Fly, chicken, fly. And I kept flying on my chicken, dodging everything I could until I got to Red Obelisk, an extremely dangerous part of the map, but I had to be here, as I knew there was crystal somewhere in the area. Thus, I was scaling the cliffside, searching around, except my head was getting woozy. The sun was getting to me, heat stroke was taking over, so I had to find this crystal and fast before the sun took my life. I chose to leap across the valley to search the other side, seeing double as I dodged dino after dino, through caves and over cliffs, searching everywhere until finally as I ascended a cliff I spotted some crystal across the bay, and leaped to flap towards it. I could barely see straight at this point as I smashed my pick into the crystal node to pocket a small amount. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I now had to get home and leap from the cliff to begin the journey home. I mean, all this journey has shown me is that I really need to get myself some desert cloth. That's a wyvern. Don't see me, 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 please don't see me. Chickens are not your natural food. It took a while, but finally got home, where I proceeded to float around in the water for a little while as a terrorbird attacked. Dalek and I quickly took it down so I could continue to just sit in the water while my heat stroke passed. I made good use of my time though as I crafted up my brand new spyglass, the awesome spyglass. An incredibly powerful tool as it can show you a creature's name, level, stats, and what it needs to tame it. Then decided my cloth wouldn't cut it anymore, making myself a whip which I pocketed and then set off in search of silk to harvest. Oh, that's a spider, run away! There it is. No. Fly, fly, chicken, fly! Run away!
What are you playing, Grounded?
Might as well be.
Grounded with dinosaurs.
And with the giant nightmare fuel behind me, I kept running along the rocks, swimming through the water and flapping through the air, eventually getting to a spot where, using my whip, began to gather up a mass of bushes for silk, berries and more, collecting everything I was going to need for some desert cloth armor. And I finally had all the silk I was going to need in the morning of day 10. Then began the long run home, flying as much as I could until I got there and began to craft up my new clothes. The desert cloth armor is incredibly needed for scorched as it gives you quite a high heat resistance, which is great for reducing the effects of heat stroke. I also made sure to top up my trank arrows before heading off on Dalek again in search of a friend. I found a male level 130 terrorbird that I bowled and began to fill with arrows, even having it get stuck on a cliff allowing me to continue filling it with arrows until it fell asleep as the sun was starting to set. With the sun rising while I waited for my terrorbird, I spotted that dragon I had seen before, and saw it was a bloodstorm dragon. It was only level 20 with 70,000 health. Very terrifying. I had to take out a terrorbird that I proceeded to harvest and feed to my terrorbird sleeping on the cliff. Cannibalism at its finest. Then headed home where I used some ingots and crystal to craft up my dino digitizer. It's basically the soul gun from ASE, and I then got back to my new chicken who I named Doric, bringing him home, and then I set up both to begin breeding, grabbing the egg and hatching it into triplets. Not bad. I named them Dee Dee, and Deed, then proceeded to spend the rest of the day showing the bushes who's boss by whipping them into shape for resources. Have to put those bushes in their place, you know. And I continued to breed my chickens into the next morning before saddling up Doric instead and set off on his back flapping through the sky, speedily running up the cliffs to where another chicken tried to terrorize me. But I got the better of it, so I could freely go and gather up a ton more metal, fighting off the wild geese and gathering all that I could carry so I could fly home. Dropping into the water in order to save running all the way down so I could dump off the metal to begin smelting while I headed out again, coming across a tech wolf, which seemed pretty cool, but I was on my way to get some cactus. You see, I wanted to try get some cactus sap to make into clay for adobe structures, but with my stone axe breaking and a terror bird chasing me away, I simply chose to head home. And arriving there, I began to grind the cactus sap and some sand together in order to form clay. I knew I was going to need more though, so made a metal axe which did help increase how much sand I was getting from these rocks, but if I could tame a Doedicurus, that would be much better. So I was going to need to find one. And if I was going to tame something though, I harvested up some wood and thatch so I could make some more billboards. And I did try and trap this shield horn, but it was like a ninja as it slowly moved before I could enclose it. Then by the time I had my boards back, it was being attacked by some thornies. Thornies which had a baby. I tried to claim it, but it just slowly waddled away from me. And that's when I saw there was a ringed red drop right here. And it had an Ascended Rex saddle! Awkward moment when you come across a red ringed supply drop with an Ascendant Rex saddle and you're not high enough level to open up the loot drop. Well, that sucks. But I did see my shield horn was back, and this time I easily threw down my billboards trapping it. Ooh, it broke through my billboards. Okay, never mind. Well, that didn't go to plan. I had to harvest some more trees to make new billboards. As I was busy with that, however, I saw a little Jabba with a cute little baby. So I took out the parent to claim the baby as my own, naming it Della, and then nearby there was a wild chicken attacking a shield horn which had another baby. So I joined the side of the terror bird and attacked the shield horn. I started to pepper it with arrows only for it to run away before I could take it out. But then some Daedons joined in and they finished off the shield horn so I could then freely claim the baby. The pigs were attacking another baby, so I bowled them, claimed the baby, trapped it up, and ran away, having snatched some kids to add to my army. Then made my way home. I still wanted to upgrade my house into some adobe, but that was going to take some more resources. So I spent my morning imprinting the shield horns I had stolen, named them Duck and Deck, and took out the wild chicken that came by to try and ruin my day. Then when Duck was fully grown up, I saddled her and rode her to begin gathering even more berries than I ever had before. Just look at that massive profit. It felt good. But that's when Della started to make some noises. Chipos, what is Is that rain? I couldn't worry about that right now though, as I saw a moth which I bowled to try and trank so I'd have a flyer, but didn't deal enough torpor. Then as I started to craft up some adobe structures, a sandstorm had begun to roll in as massive winds picked up, blowing huge wafts of sand and dust around, engulfing what must be the entire map. I quickly placed down the few pieces of adobe I'd crafted for a little extra protection, but I wouldn't be able to do anything else for today until the storm had cleared. And with pants and ears full of sand, riding on Doric's back, we flapped off to go and see what we could find. Flying far across with the little wings, grabbing some drops when I found some more of those little Namongosaurus and wanted to tame them, only to bowler my own chicken. But I quickly bowled them afterwards to fire a few arrows into their heads to knock them out, used my whip to pick up a couple berries that I fed to the little guys in order to tame them. I named them Delilah and Dominic before continuing on, only for a massive golem to emerge from the ground right next to me, so I had to sprint away before it could kill me. And then I found something that would be incredibly important to get. I found an Anzu egg. Using my whip, I tried to grab the eggs, but it didn't work, and thus I jumped off to snatch the egg, aggroing the Anzu to attack. So close, and yet a rip Dalek. I ran back on a new chicken, finding the Anzu had, in spite, set up a new nest on my corpse. How considerate. Grabbing my stuff, I also recovered the loot from Doric's body, and saw the Anzu had wandered off from its egg. Well, don't mind if I do. I escaped this time safe and sound, hiding in a crevice where the Anzu lost aggro as the day was ending. And I had one final flight to get home on day 16, only for a wolf to follow me home. But Bola and Bird, we took it out before it caused any damage. I then set up a torch so I could hatch my Anzu eggs, and I named them Dol and Dill, and then imprinted them to ensure they raised up to be the best deadly geese I could ever want. You see, Anzu have a unique ability. When they're adults, they can be carers for your baby, acting as a nanny to imprint and raise the children faster. I then did some base work setting up more storage while I enabled the 2 Anzus I had stolen to begin breeding just to ensure I had backups. Only for another storm to begin to swarm, making work much harder, though it finally ended towards the later half of the day so I could test out Dill, and jumping on his back, and he was so quick. An incredible harvester as well, an upgraded chicken, exactly what I needed. On Dill, I headed out to try and get some cactus to make more adobe, but it didn't seem to gather any from the big cacti, so I kept up just running around on Dill, only to spot the scariest chicken yet, a razor tooth. And I'll be real, I've got no clue what my obsession with chickens is this video, but I wanted one. I kept moving on my Anzu running along when I found a scorched Lyrinosaurus, and it only needed some berry jam to tame, which I was able to craft in my inventory by smashing some berries together, then began to feed it to the mini Bronto. There was also more of those mini chickens. Okay, I'll stop the chicken references now. And the name Mongosaurus running around, and the sparkler said they'll assist me with taming other dinosaurs. With the little guy tamed, I named him Dipper, then decided to see how Dipper actually worked, as I could enable tame helping, which made the mini Bronto glow purple. Not sure what it actually did, but it did it, I guess. And the mini Bronto ended up taming regardless, and I named him Doc. I then tamed a second one, who I named Dup, then began the journey home on my Anzu. Once there, I saddled up Doc to test him out, and he was actually just useless. Like, my shield horn was just way better. So I just decided I needed to get something to help my next goal, and that was the grappling hook. I wanted to snatch a Wyvern egg. Now, I wasn't going to attempt the egg steal yet. I still needed some more items and levels before attempting that. I also wanted a proper base, and that's why I was running out on Dull, my Anzu, fighting off the terror birds, and then came across an Anki, and it had a baby I claimed to name Bruce, since his parents were now dead. But what I was out here to do was to get a ton of cactus for adobe, eventually finding a small batch of cactus, except no matter how much I tried, my Anzu could not gather any of them, so I kept moving where I saw another razor tooth munching the corpse of a Serato, and took another attempt at harvesting a cactus patch, but it still didn't work. I was going to need to try something else. Running home, I dropped in to empty my inventory and grabbed my backup plan. Sprinted to find those cactus patches again, where I threw out my shield horn duck, and she was an absolute god at gathering cactus. Definitely a certified shield horn enjoyer now. And I was then on my way home with pockets full of cacti when I stopped by something. Something I had seen before but not interacted with, and that was a Pyroraptor. I wanted to see how strong it was and attacked. But as it died, a Phoenix Pyroraptor spawned in its place, and this one did way more damage than I thought. And after that surprise, I just chose to head home and wanted to start crafting up all my adobe. Except I was short of sand. Damn it, man! I didn't even have enough hide to make a saddle for my Anki to get the sand. And I found a wolf I could take out in the morning for the hide to make an Anki saddle. And I would still need a little more, so took out the thorny only to see a shieldhorn fighting a mega spider. I'm nothing if not opportunistic and decided to harvest a corpse and then take out the shieldhorn. Easy hide, you know. And I also saw a dode huddling itself in a ball and took it down. I'm sure killing that won't come back to bite me. As I took out another dode, at my base I used all the hide to make an Anki saddle. Took out the saber which had followed me home, then saddled my Anki so I could finally farm some sand. Man, can Ankis not gather sand? I have to tame a dode. If only I had tamed those dodes instead of killing them. Well, back out I go to search, and search, and search. For what felt like forever until finally I found one. Except it was only level 20. So I kept hunting till I found a level 90. And even better, I found a level 230. Perfect. It was even better since it had a baby. So die, parrot. Your baby is now mine. I also tamed the baby's friend. Fantastic. Dodes acquired. But then as I turned to head home, I saw something. Why is there a dragon flying above my base? I don't like it. It's like right up top my base. That flying dog was terrifying. Fortunately, it doesn't seem to have a big aggro range, so I'm okay for the moment. I then parked my Anzu to start dropping off the resources as the dragon attacked. Oh, it aggroed. It killed my Anzu. That's unfortunate. But I did manage to lead it somewhat away from my base, I guess. That really was not good. I had a closer look in photo mode, and now this thing looked awesomely terrifying. I recovered my stuff before running home on foot, watching the dragon just patrolling menacingly. So I walked inside my box, closed the door, and lay on the floor in hiding. All while the dragon just derped around on the cliff nearby. I so badly wanted to tame one for myself, and I will. I'll try to tame one of every dragon from the Draconic Chronicles mod. Mark my words. At least now I had a dode saddle so I could get some sand. And I had to assume the dragon had left in the morning, so I saddled up my dode or hide named Boulder, then began to smash all the rocks I could. And I needed so much sand, and this was my way to get it. Smashing rocks throughout the day, even using my whip to force the dode to begin roaming around. Smashing the rocks apart before mixing it up with the cactus sap in order to make clay. And I even set up some extra mortar and pestles so that I could craft even more clay. But then as I was rolling around, the anti-sand police attacked. A saber and a wolf, but I was able to bowler them in order to flee into the lake. The saber followed me, but with only one attacking me, I could take it out. And the wolf had vanished from my view, but came back as I got close to my box and took it out, thus freeing me up to spend the rest of the day harvesting sand. Since I was gathering so much sand, I was also getting a lot of stone. Stone that I used to build a draconic shrine, the main structure I'll need to use to craft some of the dragon stuff, and also place down the draconic guide so I would know how to actually tame these beasts in order to end off the day. And at least now I knew all of the dragons I would need to tame, and one of them was a Wyvernicorn. While I wanted to go steal a Wyvern egg, I had something more urgent that I wanted to do now that I had some basic tames. I wanted a better base. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't even complete, but it was mine, and slightly better than a 2x2 wooden box. I'll upgrade it some more later, but for now it was day 25, and I had said I wanted a wyvern egg on today, then set out on Dil my Anzu, and I had enough structures in my backpack to set up a small outpost, though I'll need to get some hide along the way for bed. So as I kept heading east, I did come across a tech equus, not exactly something that would give me any hide, but a shield horn however. This would work, as I took out everything it was fighting then took it down. And I grabbed a drop along the way which gave me my first pair of desert goggles. I now had everything I was going to need and ran up the hill to arrive at the desert scar, a chasm full of wyverns guarding their nests. Lava rivers flowing down the center and heights that would make anyone feel a bit queasy. I needed to find somewhere to set up my outpost, spotting a massive scorpion roaming in the desert. I may need to look into those, but I was here for my wyvern and set up my 2x2 hut in a safe spot under a tree. Here I placed down my beds and a box to dump all of the belongings, only holding onto a grappling hook. Then began to pull myself up to enter the trench, except there was a flame-forged dragon who showed up. And look at the cute little chunky guy. He could have hit me from there so I could ignore him, and looking around there were no other wyverns in the trench. So I dropped down and deployed a parachute before grappling to an egg and pulled myself in. It was a level 110 draconic fire egg, and I snatched it. I grappled high up to get out, leaping and using my grapple as a flame forge was hunting me, and this time he actually got me as one more chomp took my life. So I had stolen an egg by A25, but I needed to go back in order to get it out. So with the new parachute, I jumped up to the edge and dived in.
Please, no! 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 No!
I probably should have parachuted a bit sooner. And waking up, I made another new parachute, stumbled my way up to the ledge and dived in. Still taking some fall damage even with my parachute, but not enough to put me off. I could then grab my stuff, and now I could see how empty the trench actually was. Not sure what Wildcard did when they remade Scorched, but I do not remember the trench being so empty. With my grapple, I began to pull myself up, leaping from spot to spot using the parachute to traverse across until I got to the top and was out. I could see a draconic wyvern on the other side of the trench, but it didn't care about me. Thus, I grabbed my stuff from the box, jumping back on Dalma Anzu, and now I just had to get home safely. This was going to be easy. Running over the rocks and past the trees, dodging around tames as I got closer to home. Things were going great. I was home free. I just had to jump off this one last cliff to land in the water. No. Dull. I was shocked. The water was deep enough, and yet Dull was dead.
Will my heart ever find its way back home?
At least I had my draconic fire wyvern egg, but it needed heat. A lot of heat in order to hatch it. So I set up torches, a lot of torches, as well as a backup Anzu I had named Kulu Yaku, then placed even more torches. And with enough torches for the egg to start hatching, eventually merging into a cute little wyvern who I named Astarion. I had to clean up all the torches, then had my Kulu Yaku start to imprint my new wyvern. But I knew this wyvern was going to be big. Thus, I set up a ladder to the roof where I left the wyvern to begin growing up, while I set up my draconic shrine to power up. Yeah, I was able to craft a wyvern saddle. Good timing too, as Astarion reached adulthood and then took flight. It was majestic. My first flyer, a draconic fire wyvern. And as I flew around, I heard the music again. I heard the final boss. I needed information, but as I tried to check out the boss's health, except it did not even show up in the spyglass. This was not good. So I was going to be fighting the final boss completely blind, and I spent some time burning the dinos alive before I made the choice to head home. Now that I had a flyer though, I wanted something else. I wanted either an upgraded crossbow or even better, an upgraded long neck. So I was out searching through the desert, taking out dinos like the Postosuchus and the Dracovinator, when I saw a baby Draco, and since I'd killed its parent, I claimed it and named it Saka. Then continued my quest and search. Searching late into day 29, finally realizing it was better to head inland, searching the drops, looting the crates, getting 119% crossbow, but what I found most useful was all the ghillie pieces. But even close to midnight, it was a superheat and I was suffering. It was over 70 degrees Celsius and had a fraction of health when I barely stayed alive, so chose to land. Set up a campfire to cook up some meat where I spent the rest of my night. But once the sun had risen to signal day 30, I was searching through the final few loot drops I could find, unfortunately not getting the weapons I wanted. Though I did have a flame-forged dragon show up and try to ruin my day, so I ate it, getting some rather interesting loot from it that I wasn't fully sure what it was or how to use it just yet. Thus I simply ended the day by heading home to begin preparing for entering the industrial age. As next, I wanted to work towards collecting every artifact by day 50. Now, all the artifacts are in caves, and I wanted to saddle up Sokka, my Dracovinator, only to find I was short of silica pearls. Back in the ball you go, I guess. Something I also found I was running short on was wood. Since this was scorched, I knew of one tame I had to get, and that was a thorny dragon. So I made sure to chop down some trees in order to make some billboards, which I used to trap the thorny in place. And I was now able to easily pepper it with trank arrows, only to disconnect. Great. Fortunately, as I loaded back in, it was still stuck so I could finish knocking it out. Except that's only step 1 to taming, and I'd forgotten to bring what I needed for step 2. Meat. That just meant I needed to hunt. Taking out a scorched Kalenkin but didn't get any prime, and fighting a Connor for a little bit of prime, and that's when I spotted the children. Some baby hyenodon which gave me plenty of prime. And with my meat acquired, I was able to shove it into the thorny, and while it began to tame up, I set off to see what else I could find. Running through the wasteland when I found another thorny. You know, why not tame a breeding pair, I thought to myself as I cut down more trees, made them into billboards and trapped. I said, and trapped the thorny. Now, it was a simple pew-pew, and with it sleeping, I'd now just had to feed it and fought all the nearby creatures, even the giant spider. Then shoved in the meat so that my second thorny could start to tame. While they were waking up, however, I made myself useful by breaking apart the metal-rich nodes in order to fill my pockets. Then ran back over where my thorny had tamed and I named him Johnny, and I then sprinted over to the second one and named her Mila. I was right near base, and since I now had a good source of wood, I also wanted to go and grab some crystal. Thus I made a saddle for my Anki, then hopped on Astarion to fly off to a spot far away on a cliff where it was safe to throw out my Anki, smash a few nodes, then flew home with the Anki held in Astarion's claws. At home, I had to whip my Anki into place since it was too weighed down to move, then transferred all the crystal into my smithy so I could craft and place down the fabricator. Welcome to the technical age, baby. First thing I made was a generator which can power all my structures, and also crafted up an oil pump which I plan to set up soon, but there was a problem. Outside my base, some creatures attacking my spikes I quickly dealt with, but now in the technical age I was going to need a lot of metal, so set up a bigger forge which can smelt slightly faster. Only to hear outside a giant spider was here, and the best way to deal with those is to burn it with fire. Burn, baby, burn. And with the pest problem temporarily sorted, I was going to need a lot of wood to power my forges. And I did have those 2 thornies I just tamed, except I didn't even have enough wood for the saddle. Ironic, I know. So using manual labor, I cut down some trees, crafted the saddle, then rode out on Mila to finish collecting all of that hard wood. With all the wood burning in my forge, I used the ingots to make another oil pump, then headed out on Kuluyaku in order to find some veins where I could set them up, finding a spot in the late hours of the day, and finally I had an unlimited supply of freedom fluid. Nobody tell America. And placing down my second pump in the morning of day 34, I made my way home and set up a map of Scorched. With this, I can finally begin to plan out my strategy of where to search for drops, as I still desperately wanted a crossbow or long neck. So I was back out on Astarion to fly from drop to drop, searching throughout the entire day with the sun beating down on me, and I was feeling so lost. I needed a win, and that's why I came back to the Desert Scar, the Wyvern Trench. I wanted more wyverns as well as Astarion was great. I was going to need an army if I had any hopes of taking out the bosses towards the end of this adventure. Spotting a nest with another fire, I landed on it to snatch the level 210 wyvern. A significant increase over Astarion, and flew off to escape any wyverns chasing me. I did have a persistent flame forge I led into the desert to get it distracted, before heading back to the trench in hopes of snatching even more eggs. Luring the wyverns out of the trench one by one, till I was able to safely land by level 40 lightning and steal the egg. Not exactly amazing, but I'll take it, as it was at least better than the second egg I got, which was a level 20 lightning wyvern egg. Better than nothing, I guess. So seeing nothing else, I simply flew home only to see a flame forged dragon had followed me all the way home. But they're dumb, so I was able to lure it away from my base to take out some random dino nearby. And in the morning I was wanting to set up some air cons to make hatching eggs easier, only to see there was a wolf outside. But this was no ordinary wolf, this was a warg. It was fairly easy to kill, but more and more creatures were finding my home here. Now sure, this wasn't exactly a hidden spot, but I may have to find a better base spot later on. With it gone though, I was able to craft my aircons and set them up to begin insulating the area. Except it wasn't enough for my wyvern eggs, so I still had to set up a good couple torches to heat the area. Then threw out the egg, hatching into a beautiful fire wyvern who I named Drogon. Now he wasn't a draconic wyvern, but I'll solve that in a bit, as I first hatched the 2 lightning wyverns, then made up the draconic wyvern crossbow. With this crossbow I simply shot Drogon, converting him into a draconic wyvern. I immediately made use of Drogon to clear out a terror bird harassing my base, but this is where I felt like I wasted my time, as I spent so much time flying around the map hunting for more loot drops, desperately searching for that upgraded crossbow or long neck. I continued to fly from drop to drop on day 38, through the thickest of clouds and fogs, till eventually, after getting an ascendant pair of cloth gloves, I just gave up for now and headed home. Once there, I set up what I probably should have first, and that is the windmill. You see, this can generate electricity for free, something definitely needed in my home country, South Africa. So it was nice to add 3 of them to my base, but all those wind turbines cost metal. So I was out on another metal run, actually using my Anki this time instead of just my pickaxe, steadily breaking through the nodes one at a time. Then went home with my loot in hand to then use my thorny for wood, but then spotted that the bloodstorm dragon was back and roaming near my base. I had to lead it away using Drogon or risk it attacking once again and killing my tames. While I was out, however, I spotted another base. This base belonged to Mr. Back to Roots, one of my patrons, as this video was recorded on a private server that is open to all of my patrons. So if you want a chance to be in a video, become a patron today and help support these videos directly. And thanks for all your support just by watching the videos, people. I flew off after saying hi, only to be caught in a superheat and forced to hide out in a river for water, as a capro jumped me, chasing me away. Thus I simply spent the day searching for loot, but ultimately still, I found nothing. This sucked. But I couldn't wait forever, as once I got home I prepared to head out and tame something big. So I had 2 things I really wanted as I set out in the morning. Either a good quality crossbow or a good long neck. Alternatively, I just wanted something high level with big teeth. So when I came past a star razor tooth, it had big teeth but a low level. So I ran, dropping off cliffs, scanning past every dino, but I just couldn't find anything. So I chose to enter the desert, when I spotted this absolutely massive flying alien oasis. But since I didn't pay extra for it, I can't tame it. Thus just running along before heading back inland to what was an incredibly lush and green area of the map. It felt like I was back on the center playing Primal Chaos, just with less explosions. Thus I continued onwards, dodging rocks and dinos, leaping across cliffs only to be caught by a Dracovinator attacking. But I battled through, barely escaping with Kulu Yaku's life intact. So it was safer to keep marching through the desert, sprinting over the dunes as the sun beat down on me, avoiding the giant scorpions only to find a Postosuchus sitting with its egg. Since it had an egg, it had something I could steal as I waited for my chance to jump off my Anzu, snatch the egg and sprint away. But I was out and caught in another superheat. I needed to find somewhere to cool down, and fast, as I desperately fought my way inland, sprinting to the water where I could wallow for a bit in order to cool down. once my health had recovered enough to keep moving, I found a small Skeledosaurus, and these little guys are basically like an armored backpack. So I wanted to finally tame one by shooting a few trank arrows into it, feeding it some berries, then when it tamed, threw them on my back so I could keep moving, only for the heat to continue beating down on me. So I had to make some risky drops off cliffs before sprinting down to the river where it was just cool enough to not die from the heat. The next day was simply spent wading through water, collecting a drop along the way and another one. And I found another razor tooth, but its level still sucked. So yet another day where I just could not find the tame or weapons I wanted. But I was not giving up. So at home in the morning of day 44, I saddled up Drogon as I was on my way back to the Scar, stealing another egg as well as any I could find, only for a poison wyvern to begin attacking before I could steal its child. I had to lure it away, leading it into the desert, only for my stamp to run out as I was forced to fight. Munching the toxic lizard freed me from its grasp, but when I went back to find more eggs, I still could only find low levels. This really sucked. I was running out of time, as I wanted to have all the artifacts by day 50, but that may not happen at this rate. So I committed to searching drop after drop after drop after drop. I got a crossbow. It was primitive. I kept searching, filling my pockets with more and more junk, until finally, dozens of hours spent, hundreds of drops searched, and thousands of meters flown. The Ascendant Longneck was mine. I couldn't help but let loose the primal instincts as I slammed my chest, grabbed one more drop on my way home out of habit, getting some random consumables, as I now had a massive task of crafting the dozens of tranquilizer darts I was going to need, refining spark powder, making gunpowder, and crushing narco berries, making sure to use Kululaku to ensure I had a steady stream of the sleepy berries I needed. As I crafted my darts in the morning, now I just had to find a tame I could use them on. If only it was that easy. As the first creature of any significance I found was a level 290 Star Carrier Turtle. The tame got ruined by a saber-tooth, so I chose to just kill it. So after having wasted most of the day on a tame that probably wouldn't have even been a decent fighter, I chose to finally expand my base, building up a small platform attachment with walls and a glass ceiling, setting up some plant vases where I could grow crops and other seeds, getting them all prepped in the morning by setting up water taps and everything, only to realize I was forgetting a key ingredient for farming. I needed fertilizer. I needed some dung beetles. So I was flying out on Drogon again, this time landing at a large box building which was actually hiding the entrance to one of the artifact caves. And I was going in on foot to try and find some of those poop pushing beetles. Descending deeper into the cave, I ended up at a ledge and was looking around to figure out my options as a snake attacked me from behind, knocking me into a pit of horror which immediately took my life before I could react. Respawning, I did craft a saddle for Sokka, my Dracovinator, then hopped onto my Anzu as we galloped across the desert back to the church. Once there, I saddled up Sokka, then started to make my way down the caves where I had to fight off so many creepy crawlies. Bats, scorpions, and centipedes were in the cave in hordes, but Sokka fought through them all, and eventually all that was left was a golem, which honestly didn't feel like fighting. Slowly luring it around a corner so I could drop down, grab my stuff, then head out of the cave. But I still needed some dung beetles, so I decided a safer place to search was the dunes. As I started to fly all across the sandy mountains, I had a tussle with some Dracovinator that attacked, but Drogon was able to clear them out. Then kept flying till I eventually found two beetles I was able to tame and name Tonal Drump and Bojiden. I just now had to brave the storm, flying right through it on my journey home. Landing once there, I could throw the beetles into my depot terminal where they would now passively convert feces into fertilizer to provide my crops with the nutrients they need in order to grow. Now if only I could actually find some high level tames, as quite frankly I was starting to get desperate. So after I spent the entirety of day 51 searching the entire map, when I found a level 210 Thyla, I just had to take it and pulled out my long neck. And once it passed out after some skillful parachuting, if I do say so myself, I used Drogon to begin burning alive all of the nearby creatures, munching them for their meat, except none of them actually gave me any prime. So I flew off where I found an ostrich with its children and ended their family tree to harvest that juicy prime meat. But here's the thing about thylas. Prime meat is not that good for taming unless you cook it. So I gathered everything I needed to set up a campfire. Then just took a moment to chill by the fire, cooking some grub and relaxing. These past days had been so stressful that I just wanted to calm down. I was rewarded for it too as I spotted another thyla close by that I tranked out as well. Made sure to shove the meat in them both and flew off to keep searching while they tamed up, finding a level 190 sand dragon in the desert. Now, taming these guys said it was passive and all I needed was a single sand draconic essence. I of course had to fly home to see if I could make it, and I could. It was just going to take some eggs, some water, and 1,500 stone. Quite a dense meal. So with that ready to go, I also set up the draconic shrine while I was here. And with this, I could sacrifice draconic ash for some loot boxes. I just had 0 draconic ash. Thus, I just flew back to my thylas in the morning, named the one Mittens and the second Cuddles, since they're just some sweet little cats. Then made my way back into the sand dunes in search of that dragon. Landing nearby, I did first take out a Faso who thought I was food, freeing me to sneak up to the dragon as it came close to the sand and fed it the essence to tame it. I named it Sandra and this thing was really cool. But before I could check him out, I was dying to the desert. Landing by the river, I could see his sand breath attack, shooting out scorching hot sandy particles. Even used the sand to burn down a parasaur for an easy meal. I took out the other creatures nearby and I loved this little dragon. Being able to swoop down like a griffin for huge speeds, it was great. I landed back home to refill my supplies before just messing around with the dragon flying around. And I started the next morning by setting up my thylas to begin breeding. Eventually getting a baby who I named Snuggles, saddled him up then headed out. As I zoomed through the desert, I came up on some werewolves which were stuck together, and I was able to put them out of their misery for some easy experience. Then kept flying through the desert, feeling like Han Lu just got a new ride, only to end my day by finding a level 290 sand dragon. I just had to get home. And as fast as my thyla was though, I used my Drogon to fly over the cliffs in order to get home, grabbed all the ingredients I needed for another essence, then began the flight back, only to fly straight into a sandstorm. I could not see anything. Creatures were coming at me from every direction when a pack of goblins found me and attacked. They dealt so much damage, quickly destroying Sandra, throwing me to my feet as I ran away. I threw out Snuggles so I could drift away before the goblins got me too. But rip Sandro, I really needed to have not lost that dragon, as I kept gassing through the desert until I found that level 290 again. Fed it the essence in order to tame it, so now I could just speed home. I made another sand essence in the morning in hopes of finding a mate since I had lost Sandro. Flying off on my new sand dragon only to see one of those giant scorpions again. You know, why not? Why shouldn't I tame one? And started to fire all of the trank darts. Knocking it out quickly, then took out a nearby vulture for the spoiled meat so that I could tame it. It then was awake in the morning and I named him Squidward. Then flew off once again, this time finding that floating mountain again, and I just took a break chilling on it. I couldn't tame it, but that wasn't going to stop me from using it as a footstool, as the rest of the day just felt wasted as I continued to search, finding nothing else I wanted to tame. And since I couldn't find anything, I thought that, you know, I may as well do a cave. So glided across the plains on Snuggles to get back to the square box with the cave entrance and dropped into the ceiling. Here I began to chomp and thrash through the tames inside, but there was just so many. I had to force feed some meat to regen a bit of health, but it still wasn't enough as the next mass attack, and I just fled the area, sprinting out of the cave to get to the exit, and now I just had to slowly walk home. I wish that was the end of it though, as when I got back to my base, the bloodstorm dragon was back and looking as menacing as ever, but I wanted him. As I drew my long neck and fired, It attacked me on Kuluyaku with a vengeance as I began to sprint around, firing dart after dart. A sandstorm even rolled in, slowing the dragon, but Kulu was taking too much damage as she got killed. I tried to finish knocking it out only to die as well. And I came back on Athala determined to trank it out, grabbing my stuff, then kept darting the flying lizard. It tried to flee, but my shots flew true as one final hit knocked it out of the sky to fall into the water in a deep slumber. Thankfully could still breathe somehow, but now I needed the sanguine essence. So I headed home only to see that the essence was unlocked at level 100. I was level 91. So I needed to level up. I needed a lot of experience. And there was one creature I knew which may give me the XP I needed. That creature was a titanosaur. But you know what they say. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, as I charged in on my Thyla, biting at its ankles, causing deep gashes to begin bleeding down its health. The Thylas are incredible at taking down big tames due to their bleed damage, dealing percent damage. I had to take moments in between to shovel meat down my Thyla's throat so that it would heal up, and its health got lower and lower until one final bite finished it off. The experience did not quite get me to level 100, so the rest of the day I sprinted around the map to massacre everything I could. Then when I got home by the end of the day, I was level 100. While I now could make the sanguine essence, I needed ingredients I did not have access to yet. So I made sure to repair all of my armor in the morning, since I needed to head out on my Thala, running up the hill as I wanted to gather just a bit of metal. Then once I got home, I set up an industrial cooker I'd gotten from a drop at some point, then used my thorny to harvest up wood. With these resources I made the draconic cauldron. With this magical pot I can brew up even more essence vials in order to tame more dragons. Now that I was able to make the draconic essences, I just needed the resources in order to craft them. I still wanted a breeding pair of sand dragons, so I was really happy to find a level 240 in the dunes. It was even a male, and since I had a female, I landed them next to each other so that I could breed them, resulting in a little sand dragon egg. I brought it home where I threw it in front of the aircon so that it could start to hatch, but here's the thing about breeding. You need space. A decent amount of space, and the space had already filled up, so I wanted to make an expansion. With the small platform done, here I could at least breed my sand dragons, so I set up some aircons to ensure the eggs were promptly incubated. Cleaning up the platform, then set up a depot terminal. See, this terminal will automatically pick up any hatched babies to make breeding much more convenient. But while breeding, I wanted to expand the base even more as I destroyed one of the walls, and I did first mess around a bit with my colossal scorpion and then set up a second female sand dragon for even faster breeding. Then in the morning, I started to build up once again, placing down structures right up until it was day 67. As obscure as us base designers, I do kinda like it. I also set up a grinder which I can use to recycle the saddles and other items I got from all the loot drops. But it was time to speed things up as I needed some tames. So crafted up a couple chain bowlers and a ballista, pocketed them before flying off back towards the Scar. As here's where I found a level 190 flame forged dragon. So I led it a bit into the desert where I threw out my colossal scorpion Squidward and set up the ballista on its saddle. Let's trap this flame forged dragon. Flew over to lead it towards the ballista, jumped off the tame and mounted the ballista to trap it before firing the chains, shackling it to the ground, only to see I now couldn't feed it. It said it was passive, so I flew off on my dragon to see if I could make the guide and learned it was in fact a knockout tame. Well, that's easier I guess. And I flew back, and this time when I shackled it, I built some gates around it, permanently trapping it in place. I was able to easily fill it with darts, right up until it passed out in the morning of day 69, and I had to use my whip in order to harvest up the narco berries I needed to keep it sleeping, packing up all the things once it was tamed, and I chose to name it Elizabeth. Let me know in the comments which movie that is from, but I think the next tame will give it away, so I flew off until I found a male flame forge, lured it out of the trench, and just shot my darts from the back of my sand dragon to knock it out. Fed it the essence, and then once it was tamed, I named it Donkey. Then began the flight home, setting up the new dragon so that I could start to breed them and let them get their absolute sexy on. And I threw out the egg so that it could begin incubating, then just messed around setting up Squidward to be a nice decoration, all while I grew up little baby dragons. Then used some of my resources to make more essences as I had a new dragon I wanted to try and tame. While I was offline, I made the common mistake of leaving my dragons breeding, only to log in and find an absolutely massive dragon hydra of babies. So I had to spend the first few minutes of my day potting up every single one. Then picked out a male which had gotten some health mutations and a nice cyan color. Syntac would be proud. Then leapt onto my sand dragon to fly out, eventually arriving at the red obelisk. As here I wanted to tame some verms. I needed to be patient and let the little guys come to me. Feeding them some skyward essence by hand, eventually taming one who I named Nibbles, and these guys are amazing. They sit on your back and can fly you up and glide. They're really cute too. So with my new little guy, I headed home where I was showing my base off to some friends. Even throwing a smoke grenade into the water pond to make it look like a very ominous looking bathtub. Then spent the rest of the day sprinting around on my Thyla through the desert like an absolute free bird. It was amazing, even if I did speed bike straight into a sandstorm, leaving me stuck until it finally passed. So I could head home, as I had a realization. You see, I could make these draconic dino murder potions. One, which I fed to one of my hundreds of sand dragons at this point, and this has a very important feature, as doing this gives you a chance to get a dino part. Dino parts which you need to make the sanguine elixir in order to tame the bloodstorm dragons. But as much as I wanted that bloodstorm dragon, I did still need to keep up the breeding of my other ones, as I replaced the male of my flame forgers, then flew off on another to test them out. And these guys actually have a secret ability I hadn't figured out yet, so I'll have to share that as soon as I do. Then began to line up tons of my extra dragons, sacrificing them with a murder potion so I could get their dino parts. I was going to need a lot of these. A lot of parts. Like dozens of dragons are dying for this. I did have a Titanosaur stomp on my base a bit while checking out my dragon massacre, just glad he wasn't here for revenge for his friend. Switching to flame forged dragons, as I had been breeding those as well, so I had a large amount to throw to their doom for parts. Then once I finally had all the parts I needed, there was only one other ingredient left, and that was blood packs. The only way you can get those is by using an extraction syringe on yourself in order to draw your own blood. Now, I do want to break the fourth wall a little bit. If you want to skip ahead 30 seconds to miss it, that's fine, and thanks for watching my videos, but don't ever hurt yourself. Life may seem hard now, but things will improve. You're strong, you're amazing, and I guarantee you there are people who love you and would hate for anything to happen to you. Ask your friends and family how they are. Check on your loved ones and enjoy the rest of the video. With the blood all collected, I was able to make myself the sanguine elixir. I was almost ready to find one and try to knock it out in order to tame it. So I started the next morning by crafting over 100 trank darts, as believe me, I was going to need them. Then took flight to begin the search, only to be fortunate enough that I found a level 280 bloodstorm dragon. But with over 100,000 torpor, I was going to have to trap it. So I flew home in order to put together some structures I would need to build a box. Then flew back where I began to set it up. Now you may have realized by now, I don't build many traps, so this stone box was not great, but all it would have to do is I began to try and lure in the dragon, firing many darts till one hit drawing its attention. And it didn't go into the trap, so it began to dance around until it unleashed its breath attack, killing me. And flying back in the morning on a new sand dragon, I began to try and lure the beast away, diving straight down for speed to escape. And flew back to recover my stuff. I was going to need to try and trap this thing with a different method. So I flew home where I made up a couple of metal gates, and hopped onto my flame forged dragon that was slightly tankier than the nimble sand dragons. I could see the blood was hobbling around on the floor as I dashed in to try and drop the gates on it to trap its wings, but missed and had to flee. Coming back around to pick them back up, I landed nearby to lie in wait, patiently until the dragon landed as I dashed in, placing the gate right over its wings and neck, locking it in place. I backed away to ensure its breath couldn't reach me and then pulled out my long neck, and this was going to take a lot of darts. Boom! It was down. I was able to then run up and fed it the sanguine elixir, taming my first ever bloodstorm dragon. She was beautiful. The comments on my community page gave her the appropriate name of Princess, then flew off as now I needed to make a saddle. But while flying home, I had noticed something about my flame forged dragon. You see, its breath attack can harvest a massive resources super quickly with insane weight reduction. So these guys were amazing harvesters. And with those resources, I made up Princess's saddle to start the next day. Strapped her up and jumped on to ride, taking off on this absolute beast. I began to bite at the tame, sending Princess into a blood frenzy, giving her boosted speed. Every kill adding to a counter, gradually increasing her damage kill after kill. She was an absolute beast, even beginning to absolutely destroy a Titanosaur. I felt powerful, so incredibly powerful. Not the first time I've played a game where blood gave me undeniable power, and it was glorious. And my frenzy ended on day 80, since as much fun as it was, I still needed artifacts. Artifacts I was meant to get on day 50. But I'm bad at the video game, so I spent the day setting up some of my verms to breed, as well as continued to replace the males of my dragons that I was breeding for mutations. Mutations that I was getting as I replaced the male of my flame forgers and sand dragons. I was going to be using these for the upcoming boss fights that I still needed the artifacts for. So I flew off once more to attempt the cave I'd found in the desert, but this time I wasn't going to try and use force. Flying in with nothing but the verm on my back, I began to dive down through the cave, only get immediately blocked by a large group of bugs. I pushed through as fast as I could, flying off into the next area. Breaking free of the creepy crawlies, I flew over to a spot where I could recover my breath, then kept moving, making it quickly to the artifact of the destroyer, and it was mine. I now just had to get out of here as I flew up with my verm to begin my escape, speeding away from some bats trying to chase me down as I ignored absolutely everything in these caves. I was just glad most of my armor was holding up as I barely managed to escape the cave with less than half of my health, starving and dying of thirst. I was just glad my dragon was fast enough to get down by the river where I was drawn by grace in order to survive this dilemma. Then day 82. It was such a waste. I spent the entire day searching for the next cave, being simply unable to find the entrance that was hidden in this crevice. It was a disaster. I did not have the time to waste on this as everything in ASA just all looked the same. But then in the early hours of the morning, I found the crouch point to squeeze in and threw out my thyla in order to take on the cave, running down into it until I got to my first set of creatures. While my thyla ripped through them like it was nothing, I was not going to survive the entire cave as I made the decision to continue on foot. Reaching the cliff edge where I could see the artifact down below me as I dropped down with my verm breaking my fall. Gatekeeper acquired. Only one remained and it was destined to be the hardest of all 3 caves. I finally arrived at the final cave as the day was nearing its end, running in only to get jump scared by a raptor hiding in its depths. But once it was dead, I made my way back in only to see a massive swarm of creatures. I tried to fly over them, but the bats were on me, so I backed off to get my breath and fetch my dragon. Running in on my flame forge, I started to try and melt everything in the cave. But I didn't spot the water as my dragon fell in, dismounting me for the Alpha Paraxinus to kill me. Waking up, I made a fresh set of ghillie in hopes it'd help, then jumped on Princess to fly back to the cave as I was going to need the big dragon for this, landing outside and clearing out some of the dinos there, before trapping Princess and entering the cave where I threw her out and began to massacre everything inside it. She was so strong and perfect for this, a true queen of caving, as everything got torn to shreds. I, however, had to dive into the water where I was able to grab my stuff for what felt like the 100th time this playthrough. Then using Princess, I took out the Alpha Paraxinus. Just the rest of the cave left, but Princess would not be fitting down as using my verm, began to zip through the caves until I got to the final chamber with the artifact, and threw out my thyla in order to clear out the final few pests, freeing me to claim the third and final artifact. And I took some time to chill and recover my health, as I'd skipped most of the creatures coming in, so I'd have to manage the same feat going out as I began my escape, using the verm to stay off the floor, and it was going great right up until I accidentally dived straight into a mass of creatures, taking insane amounts of damage. I managed to throw out a dragon only to succumb to the internal bleeding, killing me once again. I got back to the cave as quick as I could, sprinting into where I had Princess guarding, using her to clear out the final few chambers of tames. Not entirely sure why I didn't just do that in the first place, as now I easily claim my stuff, potted up the remaining few dragons, flying home feeling victorious with all 3 artifacts in my possession. And landing at home in the morning, I set up some artifact pedestals to proudly display my achievement, knowing I would be using these soon, but I'd been told of a new species of dragon that had arrived on the Ark and flew off to find it, arriving in the northwest mountains where a flock of Zaldred dragons had taken refuge. Among them, an Alpha. and I was not about to give up my throne as I flew in to take out the Alpha. Defeating the Alpha gave me its black tooth. This tooth can be fed to a Zaldria dragon of my own that will increase its ranking, but I didn't have a Zaldria dragon yet, so I wanted one. I found a level 160 female ancient Zaldria dragon, and if I wanted a Zaldria of my own, I needed to trank this one out and steal its egg. So many darts later, even getting stuck on it in the process, the deed was done, letting me snatch its egg from its inventory, but I didn't want any dragon coming at me for revenge. So I took it out in its slumber before flying up and out of the pit where it had gotten itself stuck. I had gotten another mutation which I set up with my breeders in the morning, then ran over so I could hatch my Zaldria dragon, hatching into the cutest little baby purple dragon. I made sure to imprint on it throughout the day as it raised up, eventually reaching its first rank as a juvenile Zaldria dragon. I hopped on its back, then took flight, and it was majestic, able to dive and glide through the air like it was swimming. I fed it the Blacktooth so it could rank up to young, though that did make it unrideable until I was able to get home where I could fully raise it up again into the next tier. Then took off the next morning, and its flight was actually just so freaking cool. It was so fast, and while not the most powerful, flying through the canyons on this beautiful creature was just amazing. Definitely one of the cooler dragons I've encountered in this 100 days journey. I wanted to display it at my base, only to see once again I was short on space. I needed a bigger platform, so using Mila to collect the wood and my flame forge to evaporate every other resource in the area, I began to build. And it was day 90 by the time I was done. All my dragons and wyverns parked neatly and proudly. I actually love building this base. It works for me. Lots of little pieces all attached together, achieving different goals. There were two final steps I needed to achieve in order to fight the Alpha Manticore. I had to keep mutating my dragons, getting them ready, and I needed wyvern talons. So I set off on Princess to go wyvern hunting, flying after and taking down dozens of wyverns around the trench, killing them throughout multiple days, only to find another Alpha Zaldria dragon which I took out for its Blacktooth so I could rank mine up. Once I had the talents I needed, I started to head home, only to find there was a bloodstorm dragon near my base. This was perfect, as I still needed a breeding partner for Princess. So I led it over to a spot nearby where I was able to trap her with my gates super easily, and I then simply hopped over to my base, crafted up 100 trank darts, taking refuge on a nearby rock where I easily fired all of my darts to knock it out, gliding down where I could feed it a sanguine elixir in order to tame it, fed it a gender change potion, and now I had a breeding pair of bloodstorm dragons. So I set them up on the roof of my base where they could start to breed, and this is what I plan to do for the next couple days. Breeding hundreds of creatures as I searched for mutation after mutation, replacing creature after creature, even just wasting some time practicing my bow skills at a makeshift archery range. Until it was day 97. I knew the fights were coming soon and I needed to be prepared. And while I had the army, I wanted to look the part, crafting up the pieces I needed. And as I stood feeling ready, as I was now the Dragon Knight. I had only a few steps left before I took on the Manticore, such as crafting saddles for my dragons, setting them all up outside so that they could mature as fully mutated dragons of pure power. Then on day 99, I began my flight to the Green Obelisk. Here I set up an army of my dragons. Then with all of the tributes in the terminal, I summoned the portal to take me to fight the Alpha Manticore. done it. The Manticore was dead as the ascension ritual started. I was ready as I got sucked into space, anticipating the next challenge, only for it to start to glitch and malfunction as I was pulled back to scorched earth. My fight wasn't over yet as I woke back in my bed back on scorched, and I just knew there was another boss I needed to take down. One much stronger than the Manticore. One that was going to need a much larger army. So once I had my army reclaimed from the obelisk, I began to set up a new, much larger and more powerful army of dragons. Dozens of flame forges, sand dragons and bloodstorms. This was it. It was time to summon in the Thunder Plague Pyro Wyvern.
I am fire. I am death.
Get him, boss. Dead! Down goes the Thunder Pyro Dragon. Except something I saw was there was a new boss. A boss I had never planned on fighting, but I wanted to check it out. And that boss was the Blaze Wyvern X9. And I never expected this.
Oh shit.
Oh, this is hilarious. All of it, it's all dead. Well guys, I wasn't able to defeat the final boss. Do you think you can do it? Join the Discord using the link in the description and come try out the boss for yourself. Server opens soon. Thanks again to Raid for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you download that link in the video description so that you can get that free bonus pack. Enjoy the next video.